Welcome everyone to this session about the AI native divide, how some CMOs are building an unfair advantage. Excited to have so many people on today with Q&A is if there's things that arise as we're going through the content, please do put them into the chat. We'll try and address it into the conversation. I'm Katie McPhee. For those of you that I don't know, I've been leading marketing teams for more than 16 years at organizations like BBC, Eventbrite and VEED, where I was most recently and spent most of last year launching AI products to marketers. I'm now building Expanded Future, which is an AI education platform. And my mission is to build an AI future where businesses get the productivity gains from AI, but we all gain the super skills it enables. I deliver workshops and programs to go to market teams at businesses like Crowdcube, where we build AI capability through workflow redesign and hands-on training that actually sticks. Over to you, Danny.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danny. I'm CMO at Erevena. We do executive search for investor-backed businesses. We've done a lot of work recently with AI, just done the whole go-to-market team for Anthropic, Mistral, Photo Room. So yeah, loving the topic of AI. I used to lead marketing in fund at a venture capital private equity fund. I'm very aware that there are a lot of echo chambers that exist on the topic of AI. We might feel like everyone is talking about it, but if you think about globally or, different areas of the UK, I think it's really important to make sure that everyone is understanding AI and it's not deepening the divides that already exist in society. So I think it's really important. I personally spend a fair amount of time on advisory work outside of my full-time role and also things like this to make sure that we're all learning together and we're not leaving anyone behind.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. I'm James. I co-founded a marketplace for booking musicians called Encore back in 2014. I ran that company as CEO for 10 years and we were acquired by Mixcloud. And then last year, I spent the year leading creator growth at 11 Labs, which is an AI audio company that I'm sure most of us have probably heard of in marketing circles by now. And yeah, I now advise startups and scale-ups on like how to use AI, but I often spend a lot of that time telling them to sort of slow down just a little bit and really think about how they're bringing AI into their businesses. I completely agree with Danielle. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people on social media telling us that they've got, 1,000 agents spinning up 1 million fake influencers for them. And most of that is noise. So yeah, I do care about actually using AI thoughtfully and not damaging our brands by using too much AI either.
Please go ahead and put in the chat, where are you and where is your team on the AI maturity curve? So the options are beginner, skilled, and AI native. Cool. So we've got a lot of people between 1 and 2. That aligns with what people were signing up here. There's some clear patterns between where people are on the curve, but also what the blockers are that are keeping teams stuck. So this was from when everyone signed up. Capability is clearly the biggest area that's keeping people stuck. 56% listed either skills or workflow integration as being a blocker. 40% talked about time and lack of budget or tools to experiment. And 17% talked about motivational issues, be that strategic clarity or team and culture issues. So where are teams more broadly right now?
Yeah, so I think as an industry, we talk a lot about AI capability, but it's really interesting to actually zoom in and see what's happening in teams. So you can see some of the stats here. Around 91% of marketers say they're using AI in their work, but only 6% of leaders are rating their company's Gen AI maturity as high. So there's a lot of low-key anxiety that we've all been hearing. I've been hearing a lot of conversations with marketing leaders, with founders, with investors. And I think what we can see from these numbers is that it's not necessarily a technology gap. It's probably a bit of a behavior gap. So a lot of people are tinkering away with AI on the weekends. They might be using it to edit their LinkedIn posts or blog posts and not necessarily talking about it. But I think a lot of organizations are not really there in terms of adopting it collectively. So a lot of quiet experimentation, but I think the teams moving faster aren't necessarily using better tools. They've just got a bit more of a plan. And you can see there in terms of who has an AI roadmap, for this year and beyond. Those numbers are climbing, but we really want to see, those shared goals, those ROI cases versus adoption. And I think it's really important as well to come back to marketing principles. So, awareness, consideration, conversion, those haven't changed. So when we are looking at overlaying AI tools into it, it's only as good as what your inputs are. Do you know why your products exist? Do you know what pain points your customers are really facing into? And, for marketers now, we do have multiple audiences in the sense of we're writing for humans and those agents. So it's really important to consider, what goes into all of that and making sure that those, agents are able to find what you want them to find easily.
And this question of like, what does AI native actually mean? Because it's being thrown around a lot right now, and it means different things depending on the context that you're thinking about, right? So I've heard it referred to talent. So are we hiring in AI native talent? But the way that I'm seeing it come through more, certainly with the teams that I'm working with, it's like, actually, are we thinking about using AI first? Like, how are we planning our systems and processes and our ways of working where AI is actually at the center of how we plan what we're going to do next, rather than as an afterthought. But question to you, James, because obviously 11 Labs is held up as one of the organizations that's so-called AI native. But what did that look like day to day for you versus in the teams that you're advising right now?
Well, I think when I think back to running my own company, Encore, I was exactly in the sort of position that Danielle described. I was tinkering at the weekends. I was using some evenings to explore this new sort of ChatGPT concept. But actually making time to get the team to like start using AI was surprisingly hard. So we would do these hackathons where we'd say just like drop tools. We're not going to do any like real work for about 2 days. Let's see what we can build with AI. And I think that gets people very excited. But then when you go somewhere like 11 Labs, they're a company that was born like in the era of LLMs and ChatGPT. Everyone is using AI all the time. And just being in that team, whether it's on Slack, whether it's in calls, or whether it's in the office, you're hearing all these stories from people who've just discovered a new workflow, a new automation. So yeah, when you hire people that have like spent time themselves exploring these tools, then yeah, in a company like 11 Labs, AI is just like infused in the bloodstream.
And you gave the really nice example as well, and this is something else that I saw at VEED, but when people would find something new, they would be sharing that out, and that kind of show and tell approach to bringing everyone along on the journey with AI. Like when that's an organizational norm, that's where you also see organizations moving into more kind of AI native ways of working.
As leaders, it's also very important to get stuck in ourselves. Like it's very easy for us to find an article or a tweet and just drop it in Slack and say, hey, this looks interesting. We should look into this. But it's another thing to say, I just spent my Friday exploring this new marketing tool and I was able to create this campaign in a day by myself. So yeah, it's all about like getting stuck in and leading from the front, I think.
And when it comes to what marketing looks like, so for the benefit of everyone on this call is go-to-market or marketeer or has marketing jobs to be done within their roles. But yeah, does this kind of resonate with what you saw, James, and like also with some of the ways that you're talking about growth with advisors right now and some of the workflows that can be automated?
Yeah, I mean, there was a point at 11 Labs where we were doing a launch every week. So you couldn't really spend 3 weeks getting ready for that campaign. You were forced to work in these like 7-day cycles. And I think it wouldn't have been possible without using AI like throughout the process. Yeah, I think the key part is the initial idea for the campaign. Like, how are we going to market this so that it cuts through the noise? And I think jumping straight to AI there is a bit of a misstep. But once you have a clear idea, then, writing all the copy, all the blog posts, the emails, even the script for the video, LinkedIn specific copy, TikTok hashtags, like AI is amazing at all of that. So yeah, this definitely resonates with what I was seeing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's absolutely the dream and the promise, right? That the AI native processes are going to shrink down what we're doing. But I would echo what I saw at VEED is that we were launching products every week, but that meant that everything had to be automated throughout the process to enable that, and then these kinds of time limits are able to be realized. But why does this matter? Like, what's the bigger picture? Danny, do you want to walk us through like some of the ways that buyer behavior is shifting?
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on there, I think the workflows are definitely changing at speed. I think that buyer behavior and how we need to adapt. So buyers aren't searching in the same way. And I think the way that we used to approach it, and, SEO, I know there's been a lot of headlines of SEO is dead. It's certainly not. I think you just need to be layering in some of these new tactics. And part of that is around buyers are asking. So fewer people are really clicking through and making it through to websites that they used to explore. They're making decisions more so in that summary layer. So you need to make sure, as all of us, I'm sure when we've been on Google or, insert preferred search engine here, it's quite rare, James, and when we were saying in the prep call, it's quite rare you get past that AI overview. So it's really about, as marketers, how are we looking to structure that content so that visibility happens before traffic. So if we jump onto I think it's the next slide, we've got a few, in terms of what this means for you and, how to adapt. So as I mentioned before, we need to be thinking about humans and agents. And then, as always, being obsessed with the customer, what problem you're solving for. So for us at Erevena, something that we know everyone needs to have access to is comp data. And, so we're really obsessed with solving that problem. But also it's about your credibility, and LLMs really love signals. So when you're thinking about your content strategy, it's really about, thinking reputation, backlinks, thinking about community and that credibility that you can really be fostering that helps those LLMs see you and know that this is a reputable source. So again, another headline, we love a sensationalist headline, PR is back. So that is certainly, true, but I don't think it necessarily ever was not important. But I think it's just looking at that paid, owned, earned strategy and making sure that, your AEO, GEO, LEO, whatever you want to call it, is ensuring that, they're finding that. So we've been really diving into prompts. So using tools like SEMrush has been really helpful to look at how people are searching for your brand or, within your sector, and what competitors may be tracking for over you. And then really looking at how we can adapt our content strategies. So looking at our blogs, our content, our PR to really be answering those prompts. So what is interesting as well is not all AI platforms or LLMs will be reading brands in the same way or that content. So it's quite interesting to research. So as an example, ChatGPT leans quite heavily on editorial authority. So that is your classic PR, it's your interviews, it's your podcasts, etc. Perplexity, on the other hand, will prioritize more so recency and reviews. So, when you think about Reddit or other, Trustpilot platforms like that, Gemini favors more research-backed credibility, and then Copilot likes quite structured, well-organized content. So it's not one strategy that fits all, and these platforms are changing all the time. So I think it's just important for us as marketers to make sure that we are carving out that time to really, research, figure out what makes sense without throwing out your whole strategy. And, I think that's what you really need to be anchored down on. And there may be some things that, it all tells you to do, but as the marketer, you need to know if that makes sense within your strategy, or whether putting out 10 blog posts a day is just going to be noise to your audience and you're going to get unsubscribed. So, use your brain, use all your marketing, know-how, and that can really help you to make the right decisions in this new era.
And when it comes to adopting AI, like whether it's as part of your strategy to amplify your brand or whether to systematize and like gain productivity gains, there are a lot of things to consider when adopting AI, right? And there's a really interesting article circulating this week on LinkedIn about a study that's been done and some of the cognitive issues that happen when teams tasks are expanded because suddenly everyone can do more because of AI, and the intentionality that's needed around that. And these are some of the things that we talked about, what not to do when going AI native. Danny, if you could talk to some of the other things that you've seen on this one.
So I think kind of key in there is adoption. I think a lot of chat is around Hannah, I'll drop down what Gemini prefers in the chat afterwards. But yeah, trying to focus on ROI before you focus on adoption, I think is some way that a lot of people get caught up on. So first of all, you need to be really clear on what problem are you actually solving, rather than, kind of going rogue on tools, having a million tabs. And like I'm still guilty of this. I have so many tabs of AI tools that I want to research, but be clear on your use case and don't just go rogue on a million tools, because you will get overwhelmed. You will start solving the wrong problems, and yeah, it can be a bit tricky. I think also not lumping it into one team. I've heard it referred to as if AI was replaced by the word spreadsheet. You would never just say, okay, spreadsheet lives with IT, and, that's the only team that gets to do it. No one else needs to learn it. I think making sure that everyone feels in charge of it, but also let champions, come to the surface naturally, rather than making someone do it who might not have interest in it. So yeah, really knowing what to go deep on, what to potentially leave alone. So for myself and my team at the moment, we are really in diagnostics, forensics, making sure that everything is tagged, ready to scale, and really seeing how that search volume is starting to tick up now that we've put some of the LEO strategies in place, and that's language engine optimizations, so that we can see, okay, this is a really clear uptick. How can we then be doubling down on what is working, rather than just doing a whole bunch of stuff at once?
And when it comes to actually like the strategic piece, James, like we've had some interesting conversations, and I think a lot of what you said has really resonated about just because the tools allow it doesn't mean we should build it in. But yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, Paul has put this very well in the chat. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think I'm saying that almost every week now. It used to be that when we wanted to share visual campaigns, whether that's images or videos, the time to produce all of that was quite long. So you had to be very intentional and make like very good decisions about what you were going to spend a week designing or a few days photographing. Now you can just generate it in a few minutes. And so I think it's very easy to put out the wrong content or to solve the wrong problems. I've seen this with product teams as well. Just because you can build any feature now doesn't mean you should. And if you just do all these things, you're going to have a bloated product, or you're going to have like a confused brand with too much content going out. And yeah, one example that we spoke about yesterday was a team that I was working with who wanted to, start ranking and climb the SEO rankings, climb the LLM rankings. And so their plan was to put out 10 blog posts every day or something like that. But they hadn't done any of the foundational work of, how are we going to structure this site? What is our SEO strategy? Why should we make this content? Do our customers even want this content? So yeah, I think it's easy to solve the wrong problem, and we absolutely need to be intentional with how we use these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if I could just add to that, I think having the discipline, again, this is the same with marketing strategy. It's as much about what you're not going to do as it is about what you are going to do. And I think, Miho asked a great question there in terms of LinkedIn's becoming there's so much noise with so many people offering different solutions or giving really complicated workflows and saying, I'll give this to anyone. But it hasn't been built for your specific company or for your specific pain points. So I think in terms of how to navigate that ecosystem whilst also feeling overwhelmed, I think it's about finding your trusted kind of peers in the industry that you're in. I think creating little like working groups, even if you're both of you don't really know yet. You could have co-build time and just say, even if it needs to be a Saturday or a Sunday. But I think for a lot of businesses, this is a huge unlock for all of us moving forward. So hopefully it could be a Tuesday or Friday afternoon, and you have a little builder, a few hours, or you meet up and do it. But I think that's a much better way to move forward, rather than just following random people on the internet that may not know what your challenges are.
And when it comes to adopting in teams as well, it's important to recognize that the LLMs are general purpose tools. So one business's use cases are not going to be the same as a different business or different marketing team. And I think that's also where a lot of the content out there falls down, is that it's tailored for one specific org type in one industry. Like not everything is generally applicable. Where I'm seeing teams successfully adopt AI, it tends to be where they're taking a much more bespoke approach to what's actually appropriate to automate for them, than adopting sort of general tips and tricks, which is just not going to work at a deeper level. But that takes us on to the next section, which is about the fact that AI adoption is a behavior change challenge. So the slide that we shared at the start with the percentages of everyone that had signed up and some of the blockers, it kind of resonates with the conversations that I've been having with leaders. So yeah, I studied behavior change at UCL, and I think that actually AI adoption is the biggest behavior change challenge, certainly that I've seen within my career, that's impacting the world of work right now. Because when I speak with people, like often people think initially it's a skills gap, but the truth is, like a lot of the time, especially right now, smaller teams, people are burnt out, like they don't have necessarily the time to experiment, and that opportunity has to be present for true behavior change to happen. But then there's also like a lot of different like trust issues that people have. Seeing some of this come through in the chat, I think like Derek commented about like generational guilt. There's myriad different kind of issues with AI, but meanwhile, and there's a lot of pressure, often tops down, to recognize the benefits and the time savings and efficiencies that it can gain, but without actually going through the process of figuring out, well, what's appropriate for our team, what should we automate and what shouldn't. And so yeah, this slide again, I mentioned the stats of everyone signing up. And yeah, so Danny, like from your perspective, from a team's perspective, like what kind of adoption issues are you seeing from your side?
Yeah, so I think that there's that pressure to right away kind of fix everything to show that you've saved X amount of time or X amount of, head count right away. I think we should still be really focused on how we actually work it into existing workflows to solve for existing problems. So I think that's a really important point. I mentioned tool gap. So I think it's important as well to know that a lot of big tools do have quite hefty enterprise licenses. And, I think looking at where the industry is and how many teams have been cut, budgets have been cut, I think we kind of need to give ourselves all a bit of a break if you don't have access to all of those tools. And a bit later, we'll share some of the lower barrier tools that people can get started with. But yeah, I think it's really about moving to those proper testing cycles with tools that you can access and that you can actually start to build usage on. Having those teams coordinated, it could be, someone ask the question in your team, like who is actually interested in this? It doesn't all need to be in marketing. It could be an opportunity to, team up with sales, start to really think about what you have access to. So it may be that you have note takers and you have loads of customer calls that you can start to say to your sales team or, your go-to-market team or insert, whichever relevant team there, and just think, let's see how we could dive into this and try and start to pull out themes. I think that's something that people can actually feel like they can get excited by. So then also, what else was I thinking about? Yeah, the measurement observation piece is really important as well. Don't try and, run out the gate with 20 tools and then you can't actually do your attribution modeling of what shifted the data here. So yeah, take it slow. And I think just being kind to yourself. It's a hard time to be a marketer. We're having to do a lot with a very small amount of time. We're being asked, do you need that headcount? Can't you replace it with an agent? And, I could see some laughs here. I'm sure, a few of us are in that boat. So yeah, just be kind to yourself, treat every day as a learning day and figure it out.
And James, I know you're doing a lot of work with founders on growth specifically and like agentic approaches to growth specifically. But when AI adoption's blocked, like what are some of the impacts that you've seen that have, like specifically on that commercial impact?
Well, I guess one thing I was going to talk about briefly is this fear component. I think like our teams are afraid of being automated out of jobs, and we have to acknowledge that. There was a good interview with the founder of Lovable, which I mean, maybe some people have heard of. It's like a sort of coding agent tool. And he said, you know, now that coding agents can do so much, people are asking me, are you going to hire fewer developers? And he said, no, absolutely not. Like, my developers have actually become 10 times more productive. So I'm going to hire more developers. So I think in the like tech space, it's been very proven that AI helps developers become more productive. I think in other spaces like sales and marketing, we're still figuring out like exactly what that multiplier is. But it's saying to your teams, like, I believe in you and I'm giving you these tools because I think you could do even more. And also the drudgery that you used to do, you know, taking all of the notes during the calls, handwriting every single asset, we can speed some of that up. You can do more creative work. You can spend more time in person with clients or talking to users. So yeah, I think like saying to our teams, like, this is not something that I'm trying to set up so that I can automate you out of a job. I think it's saying this will help you have more fun at work and be more productive.
And if I could add one very quick point there. The Harvard Business Review released a report this week on, you know, they did 8 months of research in terms of how AI was affecting teams, and they found that it doesn't reduce work, it actually intensifies it. And they were finding that a lot of teams were actually finding, tasks were expanding, like you said before, Katie, but also those gaps between the workloads were getting smaller because people were kind of falling into the prompt cycle. So people were, they were just trying things with AI, but all of a sudden they'd spent hours and hours and really expanded their remit. So I think that's another kind of funny blocker in the sense of it can slow you down if you're not focused with it.
Mm-hmm. And when we did the survey at the beginning, most people, you know, I think it's fair to say, like, we've all moved on from beginner. Like, everyone is deploying AI to some degree. And, you know, I think the question now is not necessarily, you know, how we move from like, how do we prompt, like, how do we start a chat? But actually, how do we start to deploy AI so it's really making us go faster, make our teams go faster, and reducing burnout and start really like generating ROI? What have you seen, question to both of you, for where teams are actually successfully integrating and going from skilled to AI native? Like, is that something, James, that you're seeing with the teams that you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the stage most of us are at is that we're comfortable using ChatGPT, and we might paste in lots of documents, maybe some screenshots, and say, you know, help me write a post for LinkedIn or whatever. But that is nowhere near as effective as like building an agent that has your brand guidelines. It's got all your best performing LinkedIn posts. It's got all of this as memory. It's got a very bespoke system instruction saying you are a LinkedIn agent. Your purpose is to achieve this goal. And you've built the prompt so that the agent learns from every single interaction it has with you and refines based on the conversation. So in my eyes, the move from skilled to AI native is moving from using sort of fresh chat every single time to I have an agent that has all the context I need and it's improving on its own. And that doesn't require fancy technology either. You can do that inside Claude with projects. You can do it with custom GPTs. You can do it with Gemini gems. But yeah, I think that's the move.
Yeah. So that's, definitely like on a technical side, like that really resonates. On the team side, the way that I'm working with people and teams, the process, the framework that we go through in the workshop, it's very much focused about getting everyone on board, because ownership kills resistance, right? And I think that, again, where a lot of training and potentially like a lot of the automation that's been happening has often been from a tops down perspective with some of the leaders that I've been speaking with, which is where adoption's been like quite patchy, but where everyone gets in the room, identifies, goes through like the roadmap of like, what are our workflows, what's holding us up, what should we automate, but actually what shouldn't we automate? What I'm seeing is that that's actually a really individual process by team, and that actually when teams are involved and they go along on the journey of designing automations, but then actually getting hands-on and building solutions themselves is where the impact and the lasting ROI can be generated. This is work that I did with Crowdcube the other week. And by the end, the team had built automation, saving 30% of time on some of the weekly tasks. So next, we're going to go through what some of the tools are that we're working with. Danny, do you want to walk us through some of the tools that you've been using that are low barrier to entry for everyone here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's cool for those of us, which is all of us, who feel a bit overwhelmed with all of the tools that are coming out and, every YouTube video and podcast and everything, Notebook LLM is quite cool in terms of feeding in different sources. I was having a chat with a friend who works at Recharge in Canada this week, and we've got different kind of sources feeding in like 6 different podcasts and then creating a kind of tailored podcast that you can just listen to on your way to work or to the station. And then you can actually chat with that has an aggregated knowledge of different things that you want to deep dive into. So that's quite cool. Perplexity is great for research and, search and diving into different topics in that way. Nano Banana is quite cool for image generation. It's not perfect. Some of them do get a little crazy. And I've used that, I would say, more so for like fun visuals. So a funny story, we had our Erevena Christmas party in December, and my marketing team are quite close with the fintech team. There was a group photo that we didn't make it into I was like, it'll be funny to kind of put us in. So rather than putting us into the photo, it took my dress and just put it on a girl that was in the photo. So that was quite strange. I was like, not quite what I was after when I wanted us to be put in that photo. So yeah, but like I said before, having time to just play around with these tools might make you laugh, which is always nice at the end of a long week. Claude obviously is a big favorite, and Anthropic are a client of ours at Erevena. They're absolutely dominating at the moment. So other than obviously their Super Bowl ads, where they definitely put OpenAI on blast for bringing in ads, they've got Opus, which has just launched, Claude Code, which is a big favorite for a lot of people if they can get past the look of the terminal, can be a little bit scary. Co-work as well is quite cool. And then, obviously ChatGPT, which we all know and love. And then I would say also note takers. Note takers are really helpful, I think, for, that piece of overwhelm. And, we're all on a lot of calls. I think it helps to kind of distill trends and patterns that may be coming through week to week. And there's also a bunch of cool video tools as well that my team have been playing with to look at how we chop up different things and get them out into the wild.
It's something that I talk about a lot with teams, or whenever anyone asks what my favorite tool is, I actually think it's just best to start with one LLM and actually use all of the functionality, because in my eyes, if you have a Gemini, for example, you probably don't need much else. You can get as far as building agentic workflows, saving tons of time, like hours per week for a team, just by setting up custom gems properly and by actually building collaborative use cases. But it seems that most people I speak with are really only using like 10% of the capability. But how does that tally with the way that you think, James? And like, I know that you're potentially working with more sophisticated agentic workflows.
Deep on it. I've chosen Anthropic, and I'm like incredibly deep in the like Claude ecosystem now. One example is I was doing my tax return in January, and I just dropped all the pay slips into a folder and then pointed Claude Cowork, which is like a little bit more powerful than Claude Chat. I pointed it at that folder, and it basically calculated everything for me, created a spreadsheet and a document for my accountant summarizing everything that had happened in the financial year. And that was a task that I didn't want to do myself and I'd been putting off for a long time. And Cowork did it, honestly, in about 8 minutes. And then, yes, we've talked about Claude Code, and completely agree, Danielle. Getting past the terminal interface, that like flashing sort of green text on black background from the Matrix, is a bit of a hurdle. But Claude Code is absolutely incredible. And if you are at all technically inclined, I'd encourage you just to like take it for a whirl. There's lots of good YouTube tutorials. And then on the image side, I love a platform called freepik.com. I'll drop it in the chat in a second. But you can subscribe to Freepik and access all image models and all video models. You can also create characters inside Freepik. So I have a YouTube channel and I make thumbnails for YouTube. And one of my thumbnails was me as an astronaut with like a rocket taking off in the background. And FreePick is able to like save me as a character and then put me into any scene, which is quite fun. So yeah, those are my recommendations. Going deep on one platform and then trying out freepick.com, which I will just put in the chat now as well.
Yeah. And I think just to add to that quickly, it sounds like a weird thing to say, but don't be afraid of like paying for a tool that you want to go deep on. And, I think ChatGPT is around like 20 quid a month. I think that's like 4 matches if you like matcha lattes like I do. So like that is worth it to invest in your education and, your future career. So I think, yeah, picking one and investing in it. But also there was a question that came up around how you feel about putting potentially sensitive information into the LLMs. I would say as a big caveat with your jobs, look and see if you have an AI policy. And if not, it could be a great opportunity for you to volunteer to write one. I did that with Erevena, and I think just use your common sense there. If there's something that's super sensitive, maybe don't put it in. Or also there's different sandbox environments that you can create that can be a little bit safer as well.
And a thing that people don't always get is that actually with using it for a business, you actually need to pay for the security. So if you're using it as a team, like that's really the only way to guarantee that the data is going to be secure. So actually having a business account, having or even an enterprise license for bigger organizations is actually essential. So either take your money or take your data. So
yeah, when you sign up to a business plan, I think by default they're not allowed to train on your data.
Yeah.
But if you are using a personal plan, or if your team are all using like personal accounts, you need to make sure that they all go into settings and turn that setting off so that the models aren't getting smarter based on your sensitive information.
On this point about how do you prove AI adoption's working, because this is something that people are constantly asking, and I know that a lot of marketeers are under pressure right now to prove the ROI, but time saved, output volume, quality uplift are all some of the measurables that I've been speaking with teams. Like actually when you start to build customized agents, whether it's to make your campaigns comms more consistent or your demand gen output more consistent, it actually ties back to the metrics and makes that measurability a lot simpler. But I'm going to make a white paper out of all of this content after this call and send it around. So I'll be sure to add in more content to that. Going on to the last section about AI trends shaping 2026. James, do you want to talk to agents?
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned this earlier, but in the development world, when you're in a tech company now and you turn around and look at one of the developers, they probably have 4 or 5 agents running in parallel at once. And their job has gone from writing code themselves to basically delegating work to these incredibly capable agents and being like an orchestrator of agents. And I think that is a sign of what's to come for other roles as well. At 11 Labs last year, we had specific agents for like helping us with launch campaigns. And as agents get more and more advanced, they can work on longer time horizons. So when we all started using ChatGPT, you'd give it a message and you'd get a message back in about 10 seconds. Agents can now spend, an hour on an extended task if they're set up correctly. And so you can have an agent do some work, go for lunch, come back and review it. So yeah, I think it's all moving very fast. And I completely feel the FOMO and the anxiety, even being sort of near the frontier. But yeah, I think keep an eye on agents and start exploring how they can help you.
And Vilma's asked the question, which agents are the most useful with the businesses that you work with? Like, what are some of the use cases within marketing specifically where agents are playing a role?
Yeah, so I set up like a very advanced Claude project, and it had access to my goals. It was connected to my CRM. It was able to go and do background research on clients. And so I could say, based on my goals for Q1, help me prioritize the CRM and then make some notes in the CRM for me. By the way, I've got a call in 20 minutes with a potential client. Can you go and do background research on them and help me figure out how I should frame this conversation? It was also updating my to-do list for me. It was like having a co-pilot instead of a coach. I use this like analogy quite a lot. Like a coach is someone that you sit down and talk to about things that have happened, and a co-pilot is something that is like in the plane, in the cockpit with you, able to like take action and make decisions. So yeah, there's a question on how I connected it to a CRM. I use Atio as my CRM, and there is an MCP connection, which is a bit like an API connection for agents. And that allows my agent to read the CRM, make notes, add new records. So it takes like a bit of setup time and following lots of YouTube tutorials, but it's now like having a virtual assistant available to me 24/7 with all the context on my advisory business. That's one example.
And I know that working with Gemini as well, that's got connected with HubSpot. So you can do something similar where, like, if you've got an enterprise account HubSpot, you can literally just query within Gemini and it will serve up the data from HubSpot. So that's not an MCP connection, but it's their, it's their connection. Well, we're going to wrap there, but yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining. Really hope this was valuable. We've been talking, me and Danny, for a little while about these themes, conversations that we would like to hear around AI that marketing leaders are thinking about. When I send around the white paper and the recording, what else would you like to hear about? Any feedback from the session today? Thanks so much, James and Danny, for joining us as well.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.